Hi guys, everything is worse under the Tories, but some things arguably matter more than others. The NHS used to be the gold standard, something that was the envy of the world, and it has sunk to a level where it's facing open criticism, and has for some time. Underfunding and the use of the private sector have decimated the health service, where more people are waiting and are waiting longer. And there's no ambiguity as to who is responsible. The Conservatives took over in 2010, and since then, with the exception of 2012 or 2013, things have got dramatically worse.
The picture is very stark. Let's go back to 2011, the first full year of the Conservative-led coalition. We'll compare 5 of the key NHS performance measures on this graph. Now, when something goes below the dotted line here, it means things are better than 2011. Anything above is worse. Twice as bad, 3 times, 5 times as bad, and so on. Now, one of our measures, people still on the elective care waiting list after 18 weeks, did see some improvement in the early 2010s. It went below the line. But by 2016, look, those improvements were wiped out, with a number of patients nearly 50% higher than 2011. What about other metrics? By 2016, the number of people waiting longer than a fortnight to see a cancer specialist had more than doubled. Since 2011, patients waiting 4 hours in A&E, 3.5 times higher. And people waiting 4 hours on a trolley for an emergency hospital bed, up, there you can see, 5-fold. And by the end of the decade, take a look at this, things were even worse. And then COVID struck. In 2020, some of these areas actually showed signs of improvement, but that was because people stayed away from the NHS thinking they were protecting it, even though health bosses wanted people to seek treatment. And here's what happened next. By 2023, 18-week waits for care were nearly 13 times worse. 4-hour A&E waits were 10 times worse than 2011. Cancer waits, a slight improvement you'll see in the last year, but still nearly 14 times worse than 2011. 4-hour trolley waits, nearly 16 times worse. Now, NHS England points out that a big driver in all this is the increased demand on the health service. Patient numbers are up, they need more care when they arrive, and there aren't enough beds in care homes to discharge people to. And all of these factors come together in one final revealing measure. Let's look at 12-hour waits on a trolley for a hospital bed, practically unheard of in the early 2010s. There were some months when literally no one in England's NHS waited that long. But in 2023, it was happening to 35,000 people a month on average. That's over 3,000 times worse than in 2011.
3,000 times worse than in 2011, after the first year of the Tory Liberal Democrat government coalition. The Tories are literally killing people. People are waiting so much longer for treatment, waiting so much longer on trolleys, waiting so much longer in general. Now, some of this can be down to Brexit. The ending of freedom of movement means that the NHS is relying more on fewer staff. The care sector is relying on fewer staff. But this isn't all down to Brexit, as we saw. A lot of it started from 2013 on. It's about the privatisation of the NHS. It's about cutting wages to doctors, nurses and carers. So if there are fewer available, it means there are fewer beds available, and it means people have to wait longer. This is the consequence of not investing enough in the NHS. Now, the Tories will respond by saying, no, we have record investment in the NHS. But where is that money going? A lot of it's going to the private sector. And if you think about trusts, if you think about hospitals who have to rely on staff, if they can't get the staff locally, they have to rely on agency staff, and they have to pay a premium for that. And that's just staff. There's so many things that the NHS is paying more for, and they're not receiving sufficient funding. And this has to be the question that journalists ask politicians. Is it enough? Because when politicians reply and say we're spending 100 million here or 100 billion there, the question has to be, is it enough? And obviously it's not. So you need to do something different. You need to invest more. You need to remove the use of the private sector. You need to increase recruitment. You need to pay staff more. The big problem is staff are leaving because of paying conditions. And those staff who are left are overworked, burnt out, and they're considering leaving as well. We've heard so many stories about doctors and nurses going to Canada, going to Australia. Why? Because the working conditions and the pay are much better. So if you want a functioning healthcare system, you need to invest money, you need to make sure it has the staff necessary, and that those workers are paid correctly and treated correctly. You need to increase this. You need to apply the same measures to the social care sector as well. Otherwise, things are just going to get dramatically worse. This graph demonstrates that the Tories need to be removed from power, and they need to stay away from government for as long as possible. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.